Hey, what's up guys, Aero here. If you're new to the channel, I'm the guy with the really silly looking mask, but one of the best poker educational channels on the internet. So I have something a little different for you guys today. The family and I just got back from the Christmas holidays, and I didn't play a single day of poker. I thought I would maybe hang out with my friend North Cal Poker, or maybe I would get a collab with Doug McCuster while I was in town. But I didn't end up playing any poker. I just, spent time with the family, and I think that's really important. 2025, it ended pretty amazing. I had a great year. A lot of it's thanks to you guys. Did all sorts of things as a poker vlogger, for the channel. Let's see, what do we do in 2025? I made a lot less than in 2024, but that is not nearly as important. The channel has grown. We're almost at 18,000 subscribers now. I played on the absolute nuts a whole ton. My hourly on there is actually more than when I played 2-5 at the win, even if my win percentage is lower. I got to play and meet with a ton of influential people in the poker world. Let's see, I met and had dinner with Corey Eyring, Abby Poker. I played with Michael Mizraki. I have a partnership now with Megan, Vixen X Poker, and that's fabulous. Can't wait to produce more videos for you guys. Overall, it was an amazing year. For the channel, we grew exponentially. The Patreon is going strong. I think overall, I only made about like 50,000 last year, but I played very little, so that's what can be expected. I'll give my results when I do an entire video showing you how I did last year. So today, my wife and I, we don't have a video ready for you guys. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna try to re-upload a video that YouTube previously took down. It's gonna be pretty risky, hoping they don't take this one down again. I'm gonna take out any potential promotions I might have made that caused it to get taken down to begin with. I'm not sure if you guys have noticed, but people in the poker world have been kind of, how do I say, tight-lipped about our promotions so that we don't get our videos taken down. Like for instance, if you notice, Brad Owen no longer says WPT gold. He just says gold. You know what I mean? We're trying to avoid any keywords that get our videos taken down. It's so silly. They're considering our channel to promote gambling, which we're not. We're playing poker. We're using our own money. It's not like we're trying to promote online gambling. YouTube says it's okay to feature real table games. They don't have a problem with that, but for whatever reason, they're lumping us along with online gambling, and a lot of our videos get taken down, which really sucks because a lot of time goes into editing a poker video. Unlike regular channels where people just talk for a while and it takes very little. Poker, vlogs take like 30 hours for like a 30-minute video. It's way more editing than you would imagine. It takes a lot of time to line up the audio overlay to match with the visual that you guys are seeing. That's what ends up taking the majority of the time to get everything synced up. Anyways, this episode I did not play very well. It's one of my worst played sessions. But not every session is gonna go perfectly as planned, and a lot of things can attribute to that. For me, I played a lot longer than usual. Like, if you're regular to the channel, you know that I have a pretty strict rule that I only play around 3 to 4 hours. And when I do so, I play some of my best poker. I make some crazy reads, and I make really good laydowns. When I play longer than that, I start getting tired. I start, making some pretty suspect calls pre-flop. Like King 3 suited starts looking good for a 5x raise. Some pretty shady poker starts happening. Anyways, this session I played for like over 7 hours, and I also played it after I had already played a few hours, I think, on the absolute nuts. So this is pretty long, very silly marathon session. And it starts pretty heinous. There's some hands I wish I could take back. I even wish I could take the explanations back. I didn't do my best. But it's something that I can release that, doesn't take a whole lot of editing, because I just have to remove a few parts that, can potentially was the reason why YouTube took the vlog down to begin with. And then it leads into another vlog where I'll just tell you, because this is an older vlog. I make a huge comeback after being in the hole for I think a few $1,000s. But this has always been on my Patreon, but for you guys it was taken down, and only some of you got to see it. So I'm gonna repost this. I hope it gives you something to watch until I can release some stuff next week. I have some really good stuff I'm working on right now. Really excited. Some more of the 100 hands videos I'm going to release this year. I'm going to try to release a lot more of those, actually. I've been like holding back on releasing them because they take so long to edit. It takes like, you guys will have to miss out on a week of me producing anything. But I'm hoping that this year we can get a backlog going on, so that by the time we're working on one of those 100 hands videos, I can release something else in the meantime, so that you guys will always have something to watch every week. I'm hoping that's what we're gonna work on this year in 2026, so that we can produce something every week, something for you guys to see every week, so you don't have to miss out on a week of Aero, because I know you guys have a lot of fun watching my videos, right? Okay, so I have a collab coming up. I did with Minivan Poker. I'm really excited. It was a lot of fun. I have a collab I did with Valdez. I want to work on that and release that for you guys. I never got to finish releasing the collab with NorthCal Poker. That's because I had to sign some paperwork to get video rights to record in California, and so I only got to record like half a session worth of hands, and I haven't been able to like work that out to release a vlog with only half a session worth of hands. So maybe I'll wait on that until I get to work with NorthCal Poker again. Other fun surprises, but I will talk about it later because I'm already rambling for a while. But 2026, exciting year. Hoping to do a lot more in the poker world, meet more people, and release more vlogs, educational vlogs for you guys. And I hope you guys enjoy this video. But now that that's all done and over with, I have a super exciting episode for you guys. This session was over 7 hours, so I'm going to have to split it into 2 different vlogs. As usual, we'll be playing 2-5 No Limit Hold'em at the Win Encore in Las Vegas, where I bind for 1,500, which is 300 big blinds. We start the session at 2:31 in the morning. 5 minutes into the session, we're on a 6-handed table when the hijack opens for a laughable $10. I look down at pocket jacks on the button. We're not going to let such a pitiful raise fly, so I 3-bet the action up to 45. Everyone else folds, but my opponent makes the call. The flop comes ace 5-8 with 2 spades and a club. He checks. With our hand holding, there's no way we can hope to get 3 streets of value and expect a weaker hand to call. If we bet here and get called, we will also gain no information on what sorts of hands our opponent could be holding, so I decide to check the action back. The turn brings in a 4 of clubs, putting 2 clubs on board to go along with the 2 spades. 6-7 makes the nuts. Our opponent checks again. I think an ace would have bet by now. Time to go for some value. I select a size that targets a hand like pocket 6s, pocket 7s, either of the flush draws, or some sort of straight draw with a pair, and shoot out a half pot size bet of $50. For this bet sizing, a better hand than ours would almost definitely go for a check raise. I mean, just look at how incredibly wet the board is. But our opponent just calls, so we can assume we're still ahead at this point. The river brings in a 5 of diamonds, pairing the board. Fantastic. Nothing changes. Unless our opponent were very specifically holding a hand like 5-6 of hearts, for instance, we should still be in the lead. So when our opponent checks for a 3rd time, I go for some thin value and shoot out a small bet of 55 into the pot of 195, but he quickly makes the fold. Still, it's nice to have a big pocket pair hold up on an ace-high flop. 30 minutes later, under the gun limps, we look down at king-queen offsuit in the big blind. The button raises to 30. Small blind folds. If this were coming from any other position, I would just fold. We have a terrible position and what I consider a dominated hand against such a large raise. We could hit a king or a queen and still not be good. However, coming from a button raise, I'm less inclined to believe he actually has anything, so I decide to make a somewhat loose call, and under the gun gets out of the way. We go heads up, out of position, to a flop of 5-9-9 with 2 clubs. We didn't flop diddly squat. I start with a check. My opponent throws out a pretty standard down bet to 20. Now, I don't know this particular player, but that's a bet sizing only a professional would use. Most recreational players would choose a much larger sizing on a flop with 2 to a suit if they actually had anything, despite the fact that we're heads up and he has position. So I don't think our opponent has much of anything at this point. I elect to float to potentially steal this pot later down the road, assuming we don't improve. The turn brings in a 10 of hearts, not quite hitting our hand, but we do improve to include a gut shot draw. I check again. Our opponent does not let up and shoots out another bet of 75. Okay, this is a much bigger bet. I was not expecting that. Had our opponent just checked, I would have gone in for a steal on the river, or if he'd made another tiny bet, I would have gone in for a check raise, but 75 is actually a pretty substantial bet. We both started with a full $1,500 stack, so even though I only have a gut shot draw on a paired board with 2 to a suit, as long as my 2 overcards are good, I think I'm still getting decent enough odds to make this call here. In a multi-way pot, this would just be an easy fold. I could be easily drawing dead. You would think that more players would give me better odds, but you never want to be drawing dead, regardless of how good of a price you might be getting. Heads up, my opponent could just be using position to bully me, or he might be betting incredibly light. The dynamic is completely different. I do eventually decide to make the call. The river brings in an 8 of hearts. We brick out completely. 6-7 would have hit a gut shot draw, and Jack Queen would have rivered the nut straight. I don't think this is the type of board we can bluff on against a real hand. The obvious flush draw missed, so any overpair or even a hand like Ace-10 is very unlikely to fold to a bet here. So I wave the white flag and just check for a third time. My opponent finally relents and checks the action back as well. I announce king high and table my hand, but I'm completely shocked when my opponent just throws his hand into the muck. Like, what the actual farfanugan? Alrighty then. 20 minutes later, we've been playing on the table just shy of an hour at this point. I look down at ace-queen offsuit in the big blind. Here, the button opens to 30, which is an incredibly large open size versus the blinds. The small blind quickly gets out of the way. The button has proven himself in the last hour to be one of the more loose players on the table. Against an unknown player, I would just call here. But I think I most likely have the best hand right now against this particular opponent, so I decide to 3-bet to 135. Our opponent thinks about it for a little while before putting in the call. The flop comes 7, Jack, 8 with 2 hearts. We don't flop anything at all except 2 overs and a couple of backdoor draws. I start with a small c-bet of 100. Our opponent takes his time, counts out his chips, and takes over 15 seconds before sliding them in for a call. The turn brings in a beautiful queen of hearts. Not only do we bank top pair, but we also have the nut flush redraw to go along with it. Jack Queen still has us beat, along with 9-10, a set, and the obvious flush as well. I want to continue betting for value, but if we're ahead right now, our opponent is incredibly far behind, so I don't want to bet too strong. I decide on a price of 200, which is just over 40% pot size bet. Again, our opponent takes over 15 seconds before putting in the call once more. The river brings in a jack of hearts, pairing the board and improving our hand to the nut flush. Again, I want to go for value and target hands with a smaller heart. Maybe Jack King or Queen King with a king of hearts or a similar hand. Maybe even a non-believing ace jack with no hearts. Our opponent has been what I would categorize as a calling station so far, from what I've noticed. He's thrown out a few bluffs, but never anything over like $100. So I decide on a price of $325. I think that's a good price for a pot of $870. Most calling stations would have a hard time folding here. Except, no sooner do my chips slide over the line when my opponent announces all in. Mother freaking A. It was a snap shove. He didn't even hesitate. Okay, I'm genuinely confused. I thought I was ahead pre-flop. My opponent is trying to say he has a full house here. That would mean he has a hand like pocket 7s or 8s? I think when I made that tiny continuation bet on the flop, such a hand would raise me, given the dynamic texture of the board. Okay, so maybe not 7s or 8s. Jack Queen of spades or clubs, maybe? That would actually make the most sense. On the turn, he'd be afraid of a potential flush. Plus he has position. So if the river bricks out and I check, he can still go for value. Holy crap, did I seriously just run into a runner full house? Oh my gosh, I'm getting such a good price though. The all-in is for about 1,040, so it's a little over $700 for me to call. 700 to win a pot of what would otherwise be $29.50. I only need to be right 1 in 4 times here to be profitable. Mother father, I actually tank here for more than 5 minutes. I'm so conflicted. On the one hand, the math says I need to make this call. On the other hand, calling stations almost never bluff. I have my chips all counted out. I'm so close to sliding them over that line and making the call. I'm in a complete pickle. Meanwhile, my opponent just starts eating his food and shows no signs of weakness whatsoever. You know what though? If you're ever 50-50 on the fence about making a call or not, and you only need to be right 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 times, you should go ahead and just make the call. At least then you'll be able to sleep at night. Here, I eventually decide to make the fold, only for my opponent to snap show King Queen offsuit in my face. He didn't even have a single heart. He turned top pair into a complete bluff. Oh my god! I just got bluffed hardcore. I guess my opponent was more of an action player than a calling station. Nothing to do but dust off my shame and not let it get to me. Not even 15 minutes later, I open to 20 with 8-9 of clubs in the middle position. The button, small blind, and big blind all call. We go 4 ways to a flop of Jack, 4, Queen, with 2 clubs and a spade. We flop a straight flush draw, which is deceptively great for our hand holding. The small and big blinds both checked me. I start with a $40 half pot C bet to build the pot, as well as get a feel for how strong our opponents are. The button calls, but the small blind suddenly puts in a massive check raise to $250, with a full stack of at least $1,500. The big blind immediately gets out of the way. Against such a strong check raise, I don't think we have much fold equity, so raising here is out of the question. With the naked flush draw, I would actually just fold, but since we do have so many outs to improve, including our 3 invisible outs to hit the gut shot straight, I do decide to make the call. Surprisingly, the button calls as well. Okay, now I'm concerned that if our flush hits, it might not be any good. Thankfully, the turn comes, and it brings in one of the surefire cards that will almost definitely give us the lead. It's a 10 of diamonds, hitting our magical gut shot straight. Now we're only losing very specifically to ace king of clubs, which I think would have 3-bet us pre-flop. Sadly, the small blind suddenly switches gears and goes back into check mode. Maybe he only has a weak mediocre hand, and he was trying to take down the pot on the flop with his check raise. Unfortunately, he's not the only opponent we need to worry about. With the button calling our small bet on the flop, but then still calling a massive check raise, he almost certainly has a draw of some sort. In a heads-up situation against the small blind, we could go for some value here without going overboard. Maybe go for a half-pot bet. Worst case scenario, he has a hand like king-queen or something similar. He might even be drawing dead with something much worse, like top pair with no kicker, or drawing very slim with 2 pairs. However, with the button also in there are too many cards that could take the lead from us on the river, like another club, a 9, a king, an ace, or potentially even the board pairing. Plus, if the button has the ace high or king high flush draw, there's a very good possibility he's going to stick around anyways, since he just gained some equity with a straight redraw. So I decide not to mess around and slam out a full pot-sized bet of 800 into the pot of 830. Unfortunately, both opponents make the fold, but we still take down this very good sized pot. Here, under the gun opens to 20. The cutoff and button both call. I look down at my least favorite premium starting hand in the big blind. Oh yes, we're talking about the accursed pocket kings. Not to mess around with the big pocket pair, especially in terrible position, I 3-bet the action up to 125. The under the gun original raiser calls, but the other 2 players fold. The flop comes 10, 8, 3, with 2 spades and a diamond. In a multi-way pot, those spades might be concerning, but in a heads-up situation, especially in a massive 3-bet pot, it's rarely ever a factor. In fact, I've released over 40 vlogs by now, and I can't for the life of me remember a single hand where the suits have ever actually been a factor in a heads-up 3-bet situation. So with that in mind, I let out a stale c-bet of another 125, which I might do with just about my entire range in this situation. My opponent doesn't necessarily believe me, so he makes the call, as I suspect he might do with the majority of his hand range as well. The flop is admittedly pretty dynamic, so I can't go too small. Our opponent could just be calling with any pocket pair, or even a naked gut shot with a hand like Jack-Queen suited. So the turn comes, and it's the deuce of diamonds, putting 2 diamonds on board to go along with 2 spades. Even though there are 2 different flush draws on board, I think it's not as big of a factor in a heads-up 3-bet situation. So I shoot out another slightly smaller than half pot size bet of 250 into the pot of 540. Facing this bet, our opponent finally decides to fold, but we pocket another decent sized pot, and more importantly, our pocket kings held up for a change. Our opponent asked the dealer to rabbit hunt the river, but I doubt he had a flush draw, otherwise I was giving him a really good price. He probably had a gut shot or something similar. 15 minutes later, under the gun limps. The cutoff, our nemesis who bluffed us off that huge hand only half an hour ago, raises the action up to 20. The button calls. With king queen of clubs against a weak raise from a player that we know calls extremely light, plus the fact that we're itching for revenge, I put in a strong 3-bet to 120 from the small blind. Everyone gets out of the way. but of course the cutoff calls as expected, and the button folds. The flop comes queen, 7-9, with 2 diamonds and a heart. We flop top pair with a very strong kicker, which is pretty darn good considering we're only likely to hit 1 in 3 flops. I start with an extremely small down bet to 100, using the exact same amount I did earlier when we flopped air against the same opponent in the exact same situation. If you'll notice, the board does contain a diamond flush draw, just like the board contained a heart flush draw earlier. Both times I used the exact same c-bet, even though the first time I flopped jack diddly squat, and this time I actually flopped a pretty darn strong hand. If you bet weak when you don't have anything, and then you bet strong when you actually do have something, it makes it really easy to play against you. Keep in mind I've been playing here at the Wynn Encore in Las Vegas for 9 years now, so it would be a really big problem if the players I play against regularly can figure out how I play. So for a small c-bet of $100, my opponent does indeed make the call. The turn is an 8 of spades, which is not my favorite card in the world. 5-6 makes the dummy end of the straight, and 10-jack makes the top end, and a lot of very likely 2-pair combinations also complete as well, like 7-8 and 8-9. I do a bit of pot controlling and decide on a check. My opponent fires out a bet of 200. This is shaping out eerily like the last hand we played against one another, down to the exact same bet sizes. Hopefully it'll have a different outcome. Of course I'm not going anywhere versus a bet of that size, so I make the call. The river brings in a 10 of diamonds, which is about as bad as it possibly gets. The front door diamond flush draw gets there, a single 6 makes a straight, and a jack also makes a straight as well. If the river had been an inconsequential card, I'd probably be willing to call a pretty substantial bet here, but not with this 10. I can't think of hardly any hands I can possibly beat on this river, so of course I go in for a check, hoping to get to showdown, but that does not happen. My opponent fires out a strong bet of 600 into the pot of 870. It takes me less than 3 seconds to make the fold, and my opponent is nice enough to show he was holding the 6 of hearts. I think my opponent was most likely semi-bluffing on the turn with a hand like 6-8 of hearts, but didn't actually get there until the river. Some nights, there are some players you just can't seem to beat, even though they're just giving away the chips to everyone else. It's a full 45 minutes later before I play this next hand of note. Here I open to 15 under the gun with Jack 8 of clubs. Now, this is a pretty garbage hand, and one I would recommend most players just simply fold in early position. Once in a while I open raise small with incredibly weak hands, just to mix things up and throw my opponents off, making them think I play much weaker hands than I actually do. It's part of my strategy to keep my opponents guessing. Here only the big blind calls, so we somehow end up with position, which is perfectly ideal. The flop comes 10, 8, ace, rainbow with 1 club. We flop bottom pair with a couple of backdoor draws. My opponent checks. I could go either way here between throwing out a small c-bet and checking. On the one hand, our hand would be incredibly disguised if we c-bet here and then drill a miracle 8. On the other hand, we don't actually need to c-bet to rep that ace because we actually do have some showdown value. So here I decide to check the action back. The turn brings in a highly desired card in the form of another 8, spades this time, keeping the board deliciously rainbow and giving us a very sneaky trips. When my opponent checks again, I decide it's time to go in for some value and throw out a delayed c-bet of 15. My opponent quickly makes the call. The river brings in an inconsequential deuce of diamonds. My opponent checks for a third time. If my opponent just had a 10 here, he's going to think he's chopping with any other 10. And if he had an ace, he's going to think I would have c-bet the flop if I had ace-jack or better. We don't have to concern ourselves with any of the missed straight draws, and such a hand isn't calling for $1 anyways. So I throw out a full pot-sized bet of 60. Our opponent instantly makes the call. We table our hand and take this one down. It's not for a very big pot, but maybe it will help with some momentum. 15 minutes later, the action players left, so many of the other players have left as well. We're down to only 4-handed when under the gun opens to 20. The button and small blind both call. Even though we're only 4-handed, I'm not about to screw around with pocket queens out of position, so I bump the action up with a 3-bet to 105 from the big blind. The under the gun player makes the call, but the small blind folds. The flop comes 9, deuce, 8 with 2 diamonds and a heart. I throw out another stagnant c-bet of 105. My opponent takes almost 30 seconds before making the call. Take note of how long it took him to make this call. This is very important and will come into play. The turn brings in a 10 of diamonds, which is obviously not my favorite card. Some unlikely straights get there as well as the very obvious front door flush. I double check my hand and notice I am indeed holding the queen of diamonds, so I do a bit of pot controlling and put in a check. After almost 20 seconds, my opponent overshoves all in for his entire stack. I'm facing a shove of over $700 into a pot of 460. Now notice how fast I make the call. I wasn't even phased for half a second. I was facing a $700 shove into a pot of 460 on an extremely connected board with several straights, a very obvious flush, and some very likely two-pair combinations. Yet I instantly called. Can anyone figure out how I came to such a quick conclusion? Pause the video for a moment and post it in the comments below if you think you have the answer. Okay, so let's break this hand down starting from the flop. My opponent tanked for nearly 30 seconds before putting in a call. The vast majority of the time, that's not Hollywooding. He will legitimately have a very weak hand here most of the time. Then we have the delayed pause on the turn. Over 20 seconds. I can almost hear the gears whirling in his head. He's contemplating whether he can steal this pot or not. I'm never putting over $700 into a pot of 460 if I think I'm behind, hoping to get lucky on the river by either hitting a jack to make a straight or another diamond to make a flush. I'm only ever calling here if I'm nearly certain that I'm ahead. So while my opponent was contemplating what to do on the turn, I had already come to the conclusion that I was calling any bet, including a shove. Plus, let's be real here. If my opponent had a real hand, wouldn't he be going for value instead of over-shoving massive over the pot? Okay, so we go to a river and it's a 3 of diamonds, putting 4 to a flush on board. My opponent flips over ace-jack with the ace of diamonds for the runner-runner nut flush, and in disgust, I flip over my pocket queens. Defeated and humiliated. He was making a semi-bluff on the turn with 15 outs against my particular hand and got rewarded for his play on the river. Mother father, this is not shaping out to be a very good session at all. Only a few minutes later, I get the exact same hand, same suit and all. I'm staring down at pocket queens yet again. I open to 20 in the cutoff. Every single person on our four-handed table calls, which includes the button, small blind, and big blind. We go 4 ways to flop a 5 deuce 4 with a diamond and 2 clubs. Small and big blinds both check. This is an extremely connected board. I start with a 60% pot size bet of 50 into the pot of 80. The button, the same opponent from the last hand, raises me to 150. The blinds both fold. Okay, I'm going to admit something here and now. I should have just folded here. Normally, this would be a very easy fold for me. This board is extremely connected. For my $20 raise, my opponent could have any of the sets, a hand like ace-3 or 3-6 suited, or even 4-5 for 2 pairs. What am I currently beating that he's semi-bluffing with? The ace-high flush draw is almost exactly flipping with me with 14 outs with his combo draw, considering I'm holding one of the clubs. Even a hand like 3-4 is not too far behind with his 13 outs. If he's making this sort of play with some sort of silly hand like pocket 7s or something similar, congratulations, he can have the pot. I don't have hardly anything invested. On the other hand, if he has me beat and outflop me with a straight or a set, I'm so extremely far behind that it's not worth it for me to continue here. This is how I would normally think about this hand. Unfortunately, this play is coming from the exact same opponent who only just a few minutes ago went runner-runner to double up through me, making a 6 semi-bluff on the turn that I saw right through only to get rewarded on the river. If you're wondering, yes, even poker pros go on tilt. Plus then you factor in that I got bluffed off of that huge hand earlier by that action player less than 2 hours ago. And the result is an Aero that's not playing his best right now. I didn't mention it at the start of this video, but before this session, I had just come over from playing at the Resorts World on the Absolute Nuts livestream channel, so I was already a bit tired after having played a few hours over there. So what do? Of course, I make the call. The turn brings in a 9 of spades. I check again. Not slowing down, my opponent fires another bullet for 275, which is a very strong bet. He's not showing any weakness whatsoever. Since I made the call on the flop, I'm not about to fold to this random 9, so I make the call again. The river comes, and it brings in a king of hearts, not improving us whatsoever, although we weren't really hoping to improve. We're only realistically hoping he has a busted flush draw, to be honest. Although, like I said, such a hand would in most cases still be 50-50 against us if he were doing it with the ace-high flush draw, and that's pretty much about the only type of hand I beat. I mean, there's always the dream he's doing it with some sort of small overpair, like 6s or 8s or whatever. but I think such a hand would probably check back the turn. So on this river, I have no choice but to check for a third time. I'm hoping for a check back, but instead, I face a slight overshove in the form of an all-in bet for just over $1,000 into the pot of 930. It's nonsensical for me to come all this way praying for a 2-outer. If I were going to fold, I should have done it on the flop. So of course, I have no choice but to make the call, and my opponent turns over pocket 4s for a flop set, doubling up through me back to back in less than 10 minutes. The first time, that was unavoidable. I played the best I possibly could. This second time though, this was just hideously atrocious play. After losing this hand, I'm down $2,800. It's also been 4 hours since I started playing this session here at the Wynn, and that's not accounting for the fact that I've already played for a few hours over at Resorts World. It's time to cut my losses and book another humiliating session for the record books. Or is it? Join me in the next episode to see me struggle to battle fatigue and an uphill fight to get even. If you liked what you saw today, please take a moment to like the video, subscribe, and all that jazz. I'd like to thank all of our Patreon members for all the support. And as usual, I hope to see you in the next video.